very much to all of you to this edition of Real Lives Continued. It's so wonderful to see you all here and so many new faces. You're very, very welcome. And we're really excited this evening to be welcoming a very special guest. She may not have travelled as far as some of the other guests that we've had, but she's certainly got a wonderful story and an exciting calibre to be joining us. She is, and I'm trying to get this right, the University Clinical Anatomist, and she is also a Fellow at Magdalen College, Cecilia Brassett, and it's wonderful to have her with us today. And so we'll be hearing a bit of her story for the first 20-25 minutes, and then we'll be spending some time on your tables discussing the very heart of her Christian faith, which is, in an unplanned coincidence, also something that centres around a dead body, which is the death of Jesus, and what that was all about, why that happened, and what it means for us today. So I'm very excited to welcome you here, and I'm really excited about both halves of the evening. And yeah, we should get started. So do take a seat, Cecilia. Brilliant. So first, just tell us a little bit about yourself. Obviously, I've just told them what your job is, but what's your family, where are you from, all that kind of thing.
So I'm from Hong Kong. I was born, I should tell you, you know how old I am. I was born in 1961, so very, very old. And I came here as an undergraduate in 1981.
So, growing up in Hong Kong, tell us a little bit about your childhood and particularly what you thought about the stuff we're talking about tonight, what you thought about Christianity and God and things as you were growing up.
Well, I went to a Christian school, so established by missionaries in Hong Kong, and a lot of schools were like that. So I knew about the Bible, so scripture knowledge or religious education was one of the subjects. So I remember having to memorize stuff, do the homework and tests and so on. So, but it was a kind of head knowledge of God, which I had. I didn't really notice very much else. I mean, we had assembly in the mornings and hymns, the standard kind of churchy stuff. I also went to a church with my family. My parents were kind of nominally Christian, so they took me to church. But again, it didn't mean very much. I just went because they went to the piano there.
Wonderful. So, how did that sort of distant, not particularly significant, vague relationship with the idea of Christianity and God and stuff, how did that change for you? What prompted that?
Well, I guess I was a pretty ghastly child when I was in school. Very arrogant and very proud. I was a pretty kind of nasty piece of work when I was a child. Used to be, do a lot of silly things like jumping off roofs and, jumping onto breaking corrugated iron roofs and things like that. Or just one roof, actually. I got a scar to prove it. I wouldn't say I was probably wasn't a bully in the sense that I was really abusing people, but quite arrogant and proud, and I think I now regret a lot of things I did to classmates, I guess. But when I was 15, my father suddenly dropped dead one day. It was the fourth day of the Chinese New Year. And there was there were few symptoms. And so just one day we were in the living room and he was in the bedroom and we heard a choking sound. And by the time we went into the bedroom, he was dead. And at that point, I didn't really know, how to do CPR and things like that. And by the time the ambulance came, it was too late. And I guess that kind of brought me up short, and thinking, golly, if he could die very suddenly, so could I. Do you want me to carry on?
Oh, of course, yeah.
So I guess then after that, when I went through a period in which I was really frightened of death. So I remember travelling to school on a bus and being absolutely scared to the pit of my stomach. The kind of nameless fear that you have. Because I thought if he could die, I mean, he was a very healthy man. I mean, it wasn't a hard moral, but and he was younger than I am now, as it were. And so I was very frightened, and I was thinking, if I were just minerals or whatever chemicals, then there's no real purpose in living, no meaning. And I remember kind of looking at myself, I remember just once, I don't look at myself much in the mirror, and then asking myself, who am I really? You know your name, and you know what you do and what you like, but what's my core identity? You know what I mean? I mean, a lot of people do. But then because I was so arrogant, I decided that I needed something, so I didn't know what I needed, but I thought, well, this is probably some religious thing that I need. And so I decided to contact the Christian Union at school. So we did have a Christian group at school. But I thought, being a very proud kind of person, I didn't want to acknowledge that I had a need, that I felt empty and purposeless inside. I decided to pretend I was a Christian, but then I guess in my defense, I thought that being Christian meant you know about the Bible. You see, because I got 10 out of 10 in scripture knowledge, so I must be a Christian, because I know all about it. I could recite books of the Bible and stuff. And so I decided to say I was a Christian, so I kind of pretended to be one. And because I was so proud, I said, well, I'll lead a Bible study. And so I sort of watched how people did it, and I did it. You can go through the motions quite happily. You saw how people prayed, and you just copied. But I didn't really know. I didn't have a relationship with the person I was praying to. I just went through the motions.
Yeah, so
I wasn't sure whether you were going to keep telling me, asking me questions.
Indeed, well, I'd love to hear how that changed into something.
Yes.
More
So I guess one of my Christian friends, who was a real Christian, I still keep in contact with her. She's actually lives in London. She's a medical physicist, and she noticed that there was something not quite right. This girl was going through the motions, but there wasn't any heart in it. I mean, I don't know how she noticed. Obviously, God was prompting her, and then she was very kind. And instead of pointing it out, instead of saying, "Look, you're a hypocrite. You have no idea what you're talking about," she actually very kindly said, well, obviously I just lost my dad as well, and she very kindly said, "Oh, do you go to a church?" And I said no, because I was just pretending to be Christian. Oh, I didn't tell you that my parents' church, there's something went wrong, and so they didn't go to church anymore. That's why I then stopped going anyway. And then, so she invited me to her church. But she kept inviting me, and every time I thought, well, I'll just make an excuse, because I didn't really want to go. I just wanted to carry on, because I thought I was Christian. I was. So I kept making excuses. And I guess the worst thing, I don't know whether you've done this, maybe you're all very good and you've never done this, but the worst thing about lying is that the more people believe you, so the more I felt bad about it. So, every week I lied to her, and I had a new excuse. I was ill, my mother was ill, I had all sorts of other things, and then I did it for again and again, and I thought, well, one day I can't carry on like this, so I thought, okay, I'll go with you to your church. And when I went to her church, I was quite amazed because it was, they rented a flat in the red light district of Hong Kong, and it was kind of above a brothel. And there I could actually see the changes that God had done in the people who went to that church. And I saw people who really knew God. So I could feel a difference in these people. And so I spent about a year going there, reading the Bible with them. But at the same time, as being a science student, I needed to be convinced that this was all not just nonsense, but that this was real. And so, I mean, in Hong Kong was quite open in those days, so you could just go into Christian bookstore and bookshop and find books on evidence for the resurrection, ability of Bible manuscripts. So I read through the Bible and read all these books and until I was convinced, I guess, both intellectually, but more importantly, I guess, seeing lives changed, people with a purpose. These people were empty inside. And I guess the crunch came when so this was about after a whole year. And then she took me to a special meeting, and there was a verse on the board from Luke chapter 19, verse 10, which was about something that Jesus said to a tax collector whose heart God has changed. And he said that the Son of Man has come to seek and to save that which was lost, or those who are lost. This was in Chinese, actually, but that's the English translation. And it was at that meeting that I was finally convicted of my own need. I realized that Jesus had actually come and seek and save me. So before that, it was just a kind of general, vague understanding of that gospel.
Thank you. Yeah. So obviously that will have changed all kinds of things, and many things have changed since then. But
thankfully, I don't jump through things anymore.
That is good news. So I'm sure the university authorities are glad to hear that as well. But skipping on to once you'd come here and you had started a career as a surgeon. And we were talking before, you were telling me that you ended up quitting a job that you really loved as a surgeon. And I found that really interesting. Tell us a bit about why, what that was like, and then why you decided to leave.
Yes. Well, I absolutely love surgery. I thought that I got the bug, caught the bug, as it were, when I was doing my house jobs. And some of you will know Mr. Humphrey Adair, who's one of our demonstrators, and he was my consultant when I was a house surgeon. And I really enjoyed cutting. And I guess in those days, open surgery is really exciting. You have blood I mean, it's just wonderful, the adrenaline. And what happens before you start an operation is that the anaesthetist, well, you ask the anaesthetist, we're very polite, or we pretend to be polite. You ask the anaesthetist, may I start, to make sure that the patient is actually asleep before you put the knife in. And the kind of, the sense, the thrill, the adrenaline, it's really like a fix. It's like a drug. You feel so excited when you put the first cut, and then particularly for people who've come in. I mean, it sounds terrible because as a doctor you're busy saving lives, but someone comes in a road traffic accident and the abdomen's welling up with blood and you don't know where it's coming from. I mean, that's really the most exciting thing. I mean, it's not good for the patient, of course, but you're trying to help them, aren't you? So So, you know, you open the abdomen, there's blood spurting everywhere, and you're trying to pack the different quadrants to find out where it's bleeding from, and then you finally find that, say, it's a ruptured spleen, you clamp it. And so, I mean, that's just amazing feeling. And I guess the problem is that it's very easy to then let that become your God. And I think that was my problem, that became the thing that I lived for. And what brought me up short, I guess the problem, I guess becoming a Christian is a lifelong process of knowing because starting a relationship. And the important thing is to cultivate that relationship. And if you don't do that, if something then supplants that, it becomes an idol. What happened was that emotionally, spiritually, I was destroying myself, but I didn't know that because you're so immersed in it. And I sort of lived in theatre virtually, you know. In those days, we had to do a 1 and 2. So one day you'd be on 24 hours, the next day you'd be on about 10 hours, and then the next day again you're 24 hours. The 1 and 2 weekends, it's an awful life, really. And it's I mean, doctors don't do that. And also, I think nowadays you do a lot more keyhole surgery, so the excitement's gone, whereas the tactile stuff is what I enjoy. But what happened was that a couple of things brought me up short. One was a house surgeon who was really, really brave, I thought. So as a leaving present, when I was you know, because house surgeons only do 6 months, and so he gave me a leaving present, and it was really quite shocking, although it was probably a joke and a bit of tongue-in-cheek, but it was how to look after your Rottweiler. And I thought, really, have I become a Rottweiler? So I mean, he's basically saying that he's been looking after a Rottweiler for 6 months. And I thought, but I didn't think I was like that. You know, because after I became a Christian, I did change, you know. And I thought I wasn't like that. But then, you know, looking back, I was quite aggressive. I shouted at people and so on. And then another surgeon also told me, you know, one of my juniors, again said, you know, you say you're Christian and you say you want to love people and you're doing surgery because you want to help people. But actually, you're doing it because you love cutting. You know, because you're just addicted to operating. And then it really hit home, and it was true. And then the crunch came when I was in a job which, so I got a job which was like we'll call a run-through job. You get a number that means that the government matches the number of consultant surgical jobs that there are with the number of trainees that there are to stop sort of the bottleneck at the top. And so I got one of those numbers in a very kind of good 7-8 year run-through job. And I was doing a vascular job, sort of, you know, doing blood vessels and stuff. I keep forgetting I'm not talking to all medics then. And so it means that I was doing kind of a lot of amputations in those days because people will have kind of black legs because they're smokers or whatever, you know, blocked arteries. Or they're diabetic and their arteries are blocked, they need their legs amputated. And what was odd was that paradoxically, these guys whose legs I amputated, because I hated consenting them. I mean, you'll realize that when you're a doctor, you need to consent people, and you say, dear, you know, Mr. So-and-so, sorry, I've got to take your leg off. I mean, it's not a very nice thing to consent people to, and you feel really bad about it. But then these were my most grateful patients. I've still kept their cards, Christmas cards, saying, dear doctor, you know, thank you so much for taking my leg off. I feel, yeah, I mean, it literally, I feel so much better now, and now I can walk again. I mean, it sounds, but because when you have a gangrenous leg, you feel ill all over. because you've got toxins coursing around your blood. You can't walk, it's painful all the time. But when you chop it off, you're actually better, your diabetes comes under control, and you can have a prosthetic limb, so you can. So God knows I'm really thick. And so it means that he's trying to drum it into my head, and I realized that there's a passage in the New Testament where Jesus says, if your right eye offends you, gouge it out, and if your right arm offends you, cut it off, because it's better to go to heaven maimed than to go to hell whole. And I was thinking, obviously Jesus is not suggesting we should all be doing self-mutilation, but it really hit home to me. And after after several amputations that I've done, and the gratitude that my patients had shown to me, I suddenly realized, yes, my idolatry, my love of surgery, my addiction to cutting is my gangrenous limb. I needed an amputation if I was to become the person that God actually wanted me to be. I did a lot of awful things during that time that I was addicted, because I did, I drove really fast. I don't even have a car now, not because my license was taken away, but I was very fortunate never to have any points on my license, but I used to drive down the M11 because I used to work in Essex and live in Cambridge. That's a bad thing as well, bad for our marriage, and I used to drive down at over 100 miles an hour. There were a few kind of near misses. Once I would have died, I think, if God had preserved my life. Drinking, not drinking a lot, but still drinking more than probably I should, and driving, because I was usually, doctors used to drink a lot. I don't know whether they still drink a lot now, but I was the one who drank least. And so they would ask me to drive them home, But then I'd also drunk some, so that's not a good thing. And also a lot of really bad patterns of behavior that I got into. So I decided, yes, I had to amputate my surgery. So I decided that I'd resign from that job. It was very, very hard. Nobody really understood why. And the interesting thing was that God was very kind to me, because the person who got my number, got my job, was my Dowling classmate. And he actually did become a consultant there in one of the hospitals I was working until he retired. He's retired recently because of other reasons, but that was great. He actually rang me when he got the job, and I was very pleased because it almost felt better, if you see what I mean. And then I decided then to wean myself off. You can't be a surgeon one day and not a surgeon the next. You can't cope. It's a bit like cold turkey. You start operating on your nearest and dearest. And so you're worried. So I had to wean myself off, and I came back to Cambridge to do a master's, do a research job near Ambrooks, and went to theatre. So in those days it was more lax, I could be more flexible, and I helped in private hospitals, helped one of my consultants, and basically I weaned myself off the need to cut. But anyway, that was, and then I had to resign again, and I still remember that day that I resigned again because they offered me another job after I'd done I did my research. And they said, oh, you could do it part-time, but knowing me, I'm quite an obsessive personality, I would still be the same, and I can't really do that again, so I resigned a second time. But anyway, so now here I am. Well, I didn't, that wasn't, yes, and then I changed completely, I changed career completely, I became a linguist.
Well, we're all now both fascinated and slightly terrified, I think it's fair to say. But we are running short on time, so I'd love to ask you the last couple of questions that I've been asking to everybody that we've had. And the first one is really what you'd say to somebody who's here this evening and is maybe interested by your story and thinks it's very, obviously your faith has been very powerful for you, but it's really skeptical that it's real or that it could be relevant to them. I don't know, how would you want to encourage them to respond?
I mean, I suppose we've all at that stage. I mean, maybe I wasn't skeptical, but I didn't know. So I guess, investigate. I mean, that's the thing that you have to do, and look at the evidence for yourself. Read the Bible for yourself and ask around. Don't get put off by the, if you like, the hypocrisy, if you like, of the church, because what we're after is Jesus. But hopefully the other Christians around you will be good examples of the Christian life to you. And you could always ask.
And when we were chatting earlier, and you said something very interesting about your experience of coming back and doing translation in hospitals and stuff, and humility. And I was very struck by it, so I hadn't thought of an ingenious question to ask you about it. But do share with us what you were saying to me about humility.
So when I came back from China, so we trained as linguists, went to China to work with an ethnic minority group, but my husband's still ill, so he's got ME, chronic fatigue. So because he became ill, we came back with our kids. And then I became a translator because I decided that I won't be a surgeon again because I can't, it's bad for me. And so I had to take more exams. That was the worst thing in my life because I'd taken so many surgical, exams and became a translator and interpreter in sort of Chinese English. I went to a lot of foreign places, prisons and so on. But one of the places I went to was Admiral's Hospital because in those days NHS was still paying for people. And but at the same time I was a demonstrator in the DR as well, so it was sort of half time because I thought dead people is all right, and so and I guess people tend to think interpreters are really dumb because they think that interpreters are just they only speak the languages. They don't have sort of intellectual capacity or something. So a lot of the doctors used to say really kind of, do you understand what ERCP is? Do you understand, that kind of thing, very condescending. And I used to be very upset about that. And the innate sinful nature in me would say, look, I was an ex-surgeon, I have whatever, and I used to tell them that. But then, after several years, I realized that that's not, I supposed to have learned that lesson when I was 16, that my identity is really my core identity is in the fact that Jesus found me and gave me life, not in my career, and I resigned from surgery, and I was supposed to have learned that lesson again and again, and I thought I still haven't learned that lesson. And so it took about 3 or 4 years before I actually learned it. And I knew that, you can't learn humility, if you like, we're all progressing, we're still having to learn. But I remember once, and this was when I was still teaching anatomy as a demonstrator, and you understand what that means. So the consultant hepatologist asked me when I was interpreting, he said, "Do you know where the liver is?" And I thought, you see, several years ago, that would really made me angry. And then I realized that I'd actually learned that. And I said, yeah, I do. And I, interpreted for the patient. And I wasn't angry at all. I didn't care, what they thought of me. Doesn't matter if they didn't think I know where the liver was. And that was actually coincided with the fact that this job became vacant in quite a remarkable way. Anyway, so here I am. I guess hopefully I've learned. Well, I probably have to keep learning. I think that's the problem.
Well, we have learned lots from you, and we're very, very grateful. Let's give Cecilia a round of applause. Wonderful, and now it's time for the second half of the evening. So do turn around into your tables, and if there are questions on the top of your mind that you'd love to chat about and you don't want to forget, do maybe throw them out at the beginning, and then the people who are leading your discussions can take a note of that. And hopefully they'll come up as we discuss this account of Jesus' death together. And if not, you can return to them at the end. There'll be cake coming round, and you'll be able to discuss for the next half an hour, 25 minutes.